Good morning. Thank you for joining us. We'll begin at noon. Uh, if you'd like to, in the chat box, please let us know where you're dialing in from. We'd love to know where everyone is. Good morning to those who are joining us just now. We'll begin in about 3 minutes at noon. While you're waiting for the webinar to begin, please do type in where you're dialing in from, where you're zooming in from today. Thanks so much. Hi, everyone. We'll begin in just a moment at noon. Don't forget to let us know where you're zooming in from in the chat box. Good afternoon. I think we can get started. It's noon. Welcome. My name is Amy Moscaratolo. I'm ACO5. I am with the Office of Alumni and Donor Relations. And I thank you all so much for being with us today for this webinar. I'm just going to do a couple of quick housekeeping notes. And if you haven't had an opportunity, please do let us know in the chat box where you're zooming in from. We are going to mute everyone to reduce background noise for any, to eliminate any distractions, sorry. And please do use the Q&A box for any questions you have throughout. We're gonna hold the questions until the end of Laura's presentation, and then we'll work our way through them. I will be recording the session for posting to our YouTube channel. And we'll share the slides as PDFs for your reference after the webinar. Send a note to my colleague, Lindsay McGrath. That's L McGrath, MCGRATH @smith.edu, and we'll send you the file. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Laura, my dear friend Laura. So I'm pleased to introduce Laura. She's class of 1997. Laura lives in the San Francisco Bay Area with her husband, 2 kids, and 2 dogs. Laura is a cancer survivor, author, and speaker whose audiences have included healthcare innovators and insurers, nonprofit groups, and cancer policy changemakers, including Vice President Joe Biden and Dr. Jill Biden. So thank you, Laura, so much for sharing your talk today.
I'm so happy to be here, Amy, and thank you for all of you for joining us today. As Amy said, I'm a 97 and I lived in Wilson House and then in Chase my senior year, did my junior year abroad. And since graduation, I've had a variety of jobs and careers. I started as a paralegal. I then went to culinary school and then worked at a wine magazine and then became a cookbook editor. And then I went freelance and I became a freelance writer. Got married, had 2 kids, and then my current job is a freelance writer and patient advocate and speaker, because in 2012, at age 37, I was diagnosed with stage 4 inflammatory breast cancer. So I've had ups and downs, challenges, and these difficult times have definitely made me rethink the idea of the creative self and creativity. But before I begin, I want to acknowledge the health, social justice, and climate crises that are going on around us. I really want to put this webinar in context for where we are globally. It may seem selfish or indulgent to focus on self-care right now, but maintaining your creative self will actually sustain you and open your mind to help create solutions to the problems we're facing. Most of us have been in a fight or flight mode since March, but it's time to move into a digest and reflect mode. And this is important not just physically, but mentally as well. We need to move from crisis mode into a new approach to thinking about these problems, and accessing our creative selves can help do that. So this is what I'll be covering today. This is the overview, the what, why, and how. Amy is handling the slides, so hold on one second. There we go. So what is the creative self? Why is it important? How to maintain it? And then we'll end with Q&A. And as Amy mentioned, any questions, just type them in, and she's managing the chat function. And so we will end with plenty of time for all of your questions. That being said, I'd like to start with a poll question. And you can type in your answer below. The question is, are you aware of your creative self, and do you use your creativity on a daily basis? And I can't see the results, but I'm going to assume that it's half and half.
Bear with us for a moment.
Okay,
Laura.
oh, sorry, you're still
No.
entering in.
No, that's okay. I'm having a little trouble with the poll, sorry.
Okay, it's 2020.
Great, so we do have the poll up, and
Okay.
we'll let you know. We'll leave it for a couple more seconds.
Any shocking conclusions from the poll?
So it looks like right now about 56% of folks are saying yes, 24 are saying no, and about 20% aren't sure.
Well, wonderful. I'm coming for you, 20%.
Okay, I think we'll end the poll and we can move on.
All right, well, let's get started with what is the creative self? And there are so many terms and definitions out there, particularly in the realm of the arts and also in psychotherapy. So here are 2 starting points that I would like to discuss. The first definition is the creative self as expressing who you are in a creative way, in an external way. And we'll get the slide up so you can see that. And the second is doing something for the sake of the process, not the result. So the focus is the process, that you're doing it purely for the joy of doing it, that there's no award, there's no financial gain. This is just for you enjoying that aspect of your creativity. And the process being the lesson is so important because it's something that gets lost. We always think of the result. I think especially in the US, it's very results driven, and really slowing down and saying, what do I enjoy regardless of the result? And if it helps, you can substitute the word imagination for the word creative. Sometimes hearing the word creative self can be almost too out there, too hard to really grasp. But what I really want to emphasize is that we all have a creative self, despite so many of us who will say, I'm not creative, I don't have that part of me. Well, as you'll see, if I can get the animation going, there's so many different ways to express creativity. It can be the arts, that you might think of singing, dancing, composing music, but it can be podcast hosting, it can be construction, architecture, flower arranging, all of these things, even organizing, which is a talent I lack greatly, but it is a creative skill to be able to organize. So as you can see, these might be some of the ways that you are expressing your creativity, but it can also be and manifest in so many other ways. It could be creating a shortcut to improve the inventory system at work. It could be creating a better lesson plan to teach the kids algebra if you're a teacher. It could be finding a way to organize the kids' bedrooms, or a more streamlined way to pack the food at the food bank. So ultimately, the third definition, which I love, is doing something that makes you look at the world in a different way. And I think that is something we can all relate to, particularly now. And spinning the word creativity and kind of moving it away from this more artistic driven expression into this, just changing your perspective. And what's really important to remember too is that it's not about being perfect. Perfectionism is the killer of creativity. And finding your creative self and accessing your creativity, it takes time and it takes practice. It takes doing. And I'll talk about that more a little bit later about strategies, but it's really important to remember this. It's not something you just decide to do and then tap into every now and again. It's really process and practice driven. As Twyla Tharp, the famous choreographer, says, creativity is a habit. And habits take practice, and in order to achieve success in that habit. And I also want to mention that it takes room and space for the creativity to emerge. I'll talk again more about that later, but our brain is naturally wired to repeat certain behaviors, and that's very helpful. That's why we don't have to relearn how to use a knife and fork every time we sit down to eat. But that same talent can lead our brain into repetitive actions, repetitive reactions to problems, kind of like an autopilot. And so when difficult moments come up, we might not be able to shift out of that habitual behavior. And I've been thinking about this a lot lately because the habitual behavior has just become part of our lives, had been our lives pre-COVID. You know, most of us got up, got ready, got the kids ready, or got ready for work, commuted, went to our jobs. We had this routine, and some might view it as a hamster wheel. We were all on this wheel, kind of doing a lot of our things in our lives on autopilot. But the wheel has stopped now, right? And this is the chance for us to look at our routine, to make space in the time that we have now. I was saying the other day to a friend, my first hamster wheel was breast cancer. That was the first stop that really made me look at my life, look at my choices, really reevaluate everything. And in that slowed downness, I was forced to pay attention. I was forced to pay attention to the world in a way that I had never done before. And it revealed things that I didn't know I was capable of. It revealed things that I didn't know were deep down part of me. And I was able to access some of those. And right now we're all slowed down. We're not just slowed down. Many of us are stopped in our tracks. And so if you really commit to taking the time, taking some of this time, I know there's so much else going on, but allotting some of this slow downness to look at your creative self, to work on developing one if you're not sure that it's hidden in there, but it is, because it's there and we need it now more than ever. And that leads to my next, I love this quote because I think it really puts creativity in a way that we can all relate to, particularly because it's coming from a scientist and not an artist. So really holding this as just a new way to think about the world, about individual problems. So why is it important to maintain the creative self? There are 5 reasons I'm going to go through. So the first is that it acts as an anchor, and it's something to turn to in difficult times. It helps build resilience, and this is more important now than ever before. Also, as I mentioned before, it allows you to express feelings and emotions that you might not even realize that you have. I just was so struck by a moment after I was done with my breast cancer surgery and I returned to my yoga mat after a long break. And yoga was something that I had turned to as a creative and a mental outlet for a lot of years. And after a long break, I stepped back on the mat and I just started to cry. It was uncontrollable. It just came from within. And it was such a moment that I realized how something that we might think of as a creative outlet that's just something that we do and we enjoy really helps actually express something deeper inside us. The other thing I think of is my speaking. I do speaking events now, and before, if you had asked me before 2012 if I would get up on any level, even speaking to a group of children, I would have said absolutely not. But somehow I got over my fear little by little. I practiced. I started with a small speaking event. I grew from 5 to 10 until I actually did a group of 1,200 people, which is a fabulous story to tell you another time. Needless to say 10 minutes into the speech, the fire alarm went off. So that was something, but I got back up and finished. And again, it was just a real eye-opener to something that I didn't know was inside me. Next, creativity allows you to think differently and improves your problem solving. You're able to, with the new recent terminology, you're able to pivot much more quickly if you're really in touch with your creativity. And creativity is an integral part of innovation. It is crucial to innovation. Without thinking differently, we wouldn't innovate. And I'll give some examples of that in a few minutes. And finally, which I think is one that is the most important, particularly for women, is that a creative self of having this outlet is something just for you. It's part of self-care. We so often are busy taking care of kids, dogs, parents, relatives, everyone else. But being in touch and really having a creative outlet just for you is really important to your mental and physical well-being. And this leads to the big takeaway, which is when you tap into your creative self, you feel energized and purposeful. And we all need to feel purposeful right now. It's so much easier, right, in difficult times to pull the covers over your head, to reach for the ice cream or the potato chips, which are my favorite. In this pandemic, I wanted to just keep watching Netflix because it's paralyzing. And I had a parallel reaction when I got diagnosed with cancer. It's almost just too overwhelming, and you feel like you're just trapped and stopped in time. But making that change, making the decision to do something, to keep moving forward, is really important. There was a moment during my cancer treatment when I was told that I would be on chemotherapy every day for the rest of my life. And at that point, I was 38 years old. And I thought, how can I do this? How can I just get up every morning, take my chemo? I don't want to stay in bed. I don't want to be a sick person. How am I going to handle this? So after much grumbling to myself, I made a commitment. I said, I'm going to do something to help other cancer patients. I have all this knowledge from all the experiences that I've had. I'm sure someone else out there needs some advice. So I decided to write it all down and put it in a book, not with the hopes of publishing it, although that was a bonus, but really just to say, this is what I've learned from my difficult moment, and this is what I can do. I can write. And slowly but surely it came together, and my book came out in 2016. So, and the flow that came with that was pretty remarkable. As much as I had written my entire life, I had never been in a creative moment like that where the book just flowed out of me. And I think you hear the word flow, but when you feel it, when you feel something just come naturally, you know that that's the right thing to be doing. But then, as much as I thought, oh, I've been through cancer, I can really pivot, the pandemic came. Quarantine, shelter in place. I was not pivoting. I couldn't read a book. I could barely get through a newspaper article. I thought I would take the time to write the novel that I had always wanted to, but I had to homeschool, and I had to wash dishes, and I had to check the news 100 times a day just in case. And then we got a puppy, which did not make me want to write anymore. And then my speaking engagements got canceled. So I was bitter, insert a lot of emotions here, but I had made a commitment, and these speaking engagements went virtual. So I had to get up. I had to learn these new remote virtual technologies, something that I had always been afraid of. And I did 3 virtual events in a month, and with only the minor glitches, no video. But it felt energizing. It felt exciting. It felt like I was adding to the world. And that just gets back to the point of feeling purposeful. And this leads to the next point, which is that imagination is not a luxury. It's a necessity. And it's a necessity in life, in good times and in bad times. And there are 3 real life examples that will illustrate this point. 3 brands that I'm sure you're more than aware of. So let's start with Lego. So the Lego brand was actually established in the 1930s in the Great Depression. The founder of Lego at the time had been making wooden brooms and ladders. But when the Depression hit, no one wanted his brooms and ladders, and so he switched to making toys. And he looked around, and other toy makers were making wooden toys. But he thought, well, I'll try to make a toy out of this new material, this plastic. And needless to say, the plastic blocks took off, and Lego is still thriving today. The next thing you might see you might recognize, I should say, you'll see it on your screen, but you might recognize. Some of the younger people on the call might not know what it is. It's called an iPod. It was the first electronic music carrier produced by Apple. And they released the very first iPod in October 2001, which was in about 6 weeks after 9/11. And Apple decided not to hold back, not to delay the release. They went ahead. They had put money into more marketing. They continued putting money into R&D. And the iPod really just obviously established Apple as a brand, and it took off from there. And what I learned actually as part of that, the creation of the iPod, which I find is so interesting, is that they created it within a certain set of limitations. The goal with the iPod was to solve the portability problem, which was, up until that point, as you know, there was the Walkman, which you had to put a cassette in, or a Discman, which meant you had to put a CD in. So they wanted to deliver the 1,000 songs in your pocket, that was the tagline, but yet make it small and portable. And as you can see, they succeeded. And the last example is Harry Potter, which is my personal favorite. And the Harry Potter books actually came out of a long bout of depression that J.K. Rowling had developed in her early 20s when her mom passed away. She suffered from depression and then became a mom and then became a single mom, and actually wrote the first Harry Potter as a single mom on public assistance in the UK. Struggled to get it published, was rejected by numerous publishers. But as we know, one press said yes, Bloomsbury, and the rest, as they say, is history. So remembering that none of these world-changing projects were created in green meadows with unicorns and bluebirds flying around. These were created out of difficult, hard moments. So it's important to remember that. So how can we maintain our creative self? And these are my strategies. And I want to start by saying I'm a pragmatist. So as much as I love hearing Oprah speak and other luminaries speak about how they find their creativity in their back garden and on their island getaway, I am usually surrounded by laundry and dogs and kids and dirty dishes. So I want practical strategies that you can take away. So the first one is set one creative goal each day. Now, I learned about the set one goal a day when I had new babies. And then I relearned it when I got diagnosed with cancer, when just being able to do one thing, like read one book to my children or walk one way to the mailbox, that was an accomplishment. This really, if you just put one thing down, it makes you so much more productive. And I find that when you have a list of endless things, you'll look at it and you'll be overwhelmed and you'll probably walk away. So setting one thing on your list and then being able to cross it off at the end of the day will keep you motivated. It will keep the momentum going. It will give you that sense of accomplishment. And it can be anything that speaks to you. It can be completing 15 minutes on a foreign language app. It can be writing one page of a business plan, or writing an email to one new contact for your job search. But put it on the list, successfully complete it, and cross it off. The next tool that I use is setting a timer. Now, some people see it as a restriction. I see it as a reminder. Using a timer can improve your productivity, and it does that by creating structure and also helping us avoid distractions. I've relied on them even more during the pandemic, when the time, the day, the month, the week really just seems like a blank page, but in a bad way. So when I found myself being too overwhelmed by this emptiness, I just set a timer. I set a timer for doing the dishes. I set a timer for putting my phone down and playing gin rummy with my children. What can you do in 15 minutes, 30 minutes? I actually set it for social media as well. I have a phobia/fear of social media. I'm afraid of doing something wrong. So I set myself 15 minutes every day to do Twitter. I started this mid-January, and it has really paid off professionally, and just really kept me consistent and really kept me thoughtful on my social media use. And the next is keeping your mind engaged creatively. I know it's hard there's so much distraction right now, but really making the effort to start a new book, to write, even if it's one page in a journal or a notebook, or creating a photo book or a memory book. listening to a podcast or a radio show, a new band, something that's different, something that engages you, talking over the fence to a neighbor with your mask on, writing a letter to someone longhand, or if you really don't like your handwriting, writing an email, but really taking the time to sit down, think about what you're writing, and send it off. And making time for this. You can, listen to a podcast while you're folding the laundry, or listen to a podcast while you're driving to the grocery store, but really making the time to do this. And related to that is keeping your body engaged, creating time every day, even if it's 15 minutes, to exercise, to move, even if it's just a walk around the block, and without your phone. I feel like I really get a shift in my perspective and in my thinking when I just stand up and walk around my desk when I'm feeling stuck. I was amazed. I started to do an online dance class during the shelter in place. And in the middle of the dance class, I would get these ideas for stories or things I wanted to read or things that I needed to remember to do. And so I would close the video and I would take a pen and paper and scribble it down. And so now I find that the dance class is kind of a twofer, that I can think of ideas while I'm trying to do my old lady version of hip hop. So you might be surprised at what comes creatively when you're moving your body. And related to that during this pandemic, that during the lockdown, and even during my cancer battle, I felt this sense of needing to stop, that the world has stopped, or your world has stopped, so you should stop too. But it's the opposite. You need to keep moving. You need to keep moving forward. And while this may seem counterintuitive, the next slide I want to emphasize as well, because I want to pause here and show you a white empty slide, and that means stop, take a minute, enjoy silence, no phones, no music. Allow yourself a little bit of time every day where there is nothing except you and your thoughts, and give your brain a break. Let yourself daydream. There are so many studies that show how restorative it is to your brain cells, to your mental and physical health, just to take a pause. You can even set a timer for that. And my fifth suggestion, my strategy, is to stay curious. Staying curious is the easiest way to tap into your creative side. Staying curious forces us to think and experience new things. This is the time to push past what you've always done, what your family's always done, how your company or organization has always done it. Try something new. Again, tied back to that idea of breaking out of what you've always watched, what you've always read, the path of your running path that you've always taken. Again, our brains get into habits, and it's time to change the habit and let something new in. Push past that feeling. And even if you just need a change of scenery, whether it's finding a new Instagram photography site that stimulates your love of travel, or your idea of looking at colors, or whatever it is that taps into changing your view of the world, embrace that. And this is an example of changing the world, of looking at it, looking at the world from a different viewpoint. I had always loved photography, but I always thought I wasn't good at it. I didn't know how to do it. I thought you had to take a class, or take a class about light and shadow, and that did not interest me. But finally, when I was diagnosed with cancer, having the time, and I was just really struck by this need to document, to look at the world, and really capture it. So I talked to my photographer friend, and she said two things. She said, aim your camera from a different angle. That get up on a bench, squat down, just look at the world from a different perspective. And secondly, she said, prepare to take 100 photos to get one good one. And so this is a photo I took actually last fall in Santa Fe. I was meeting actually some Smithy friends, and I just wanted to share that, you know, to look at the sky a different way, to look at the architecture a different way. It's really brought me a lot of joy, with or without the National Geographic contract. So leading in to this really wonderful quote from the amazing Maya Angelou, which is, you can't use up creativity. The more you use, the more you have. So even when you may feel stuck, it's just temporary. There's always more to come. You just have to keep moving, keep going. But what is stopping you? I'm hoping that I can see some nodding heads out there in the interwebs. The you're to and the I'm to. I've done both. I've done these and said these my whole life, through cancer, through the pandemic. You're too tired, busy, old, young, stressed, afraid, or it's too hot, cold, rainy, early, late, hard, overwhelming. It is the time right now. They will never be an ideal scenario. You can say these things until you're blue in the face, but it's never the right time. It's just time to get started. It's especially, I think, really important to think of this when we might get caught up in our everyday constraints, that we might say, well, I can't get started until I get the oil changed in the car, or until I finish the laundry, or until I finish grading the papers. That really carving out the time and just getting started is so key. So with this pandemic and with the parallels I've been thinking about with my cancer experience, is that I feel like everyone is longing for this idea of getting back to normal, of, again, on this theme of waiting until things change. I know the first about 6 months to a year of my cancer battle, I kept thinking, well, once this is over, I will get back to this and things will be the same again. And it was this longing, and I hear that a lot, and I've been feeling it too, that we'll go back to something. And being able to say to yourself to really understand and say things will never go back to that we are living in a different reality, that we are living in the now, which may seem too spiritual and woo-woo, but it's happening to all of us. And I fought it against that my whole life. But when you stop resisting and you let yourself pause in what is happening right now, the creative self arrives. It fills that space. And with that, it gives you the ability to approach the now in a completely different way. It takes you out of the what if and forces you into what is happening in real time. So to get you going and motivated on just a few new things you might not be aware of, I made a list of resources, which I will also make available through Amy and Lindsay. And this is just a short list of both books and podcasts that I find myself going back to again and again. And you might read some of these titles and think, oh, these don't apply to me. I won't learn anything from them. I felt that way initially when I picked up Twyla Tharp's book. She's a famous dance choreographer. And I thought, I'm not a dancer. There's nothing she can possibly teach me. But her lessons, these are universal lessons. And I still come back to them. I still reread her book. The podcasts, every week there's a different topic. There's always something that intrigues me or gets me thinking about something else. So I hope you'll try something from this list and see if it resonates with you. And then we are going into our last poll question, which is, Amy, drum roll. Do you view your creative self or your creativity in a different way after this webinar?
So we'll keep this open for just a couple of moments.
Okay.
Not even a couple of full moments. And we're also seeing a lot of really great comments coming in on the chat, so we can look at
Oh,
them.
I can't wait. Can't wait to see people.
So we'll give it just a moment more. And the results are really quite delightful. Okay, so we'll end the poll now. And I can share the results. I believe you should be able to see them. So 80% of our attendees say they are viewing their creative self or their creativity in a different way after this webinar. And I can echo that for sure. And only 5% are saying no, and 15% are, I'm not sure. So I think we've moved along this really wonderful creativity path.
Wonderful. And I hope the no's and I'm not sure is, I hope maybe in the Q&A you pick up something that will bring you some more illumination about this. And just a few things I just want to end with, to say that it took a difficult moment in my life to change my world, to make me see the world in a different way. And now we are all in a difficult moment together. Allowing yourself the space for creativity right now might be more important than you realize. And it will reveal something about you and what you're capable of. And what you do right now matters. How you sustain yourself and how you respond to the world. You do have something to contribute, and this is the time to make it happen. The world needs your creativity now more than ever. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Laura. It's so inspiring, and,
I'm so glad.
really resonates too with so much of what we're all living with, certainly at Smith, but across the country and the globe. So we have a question from Erin. She asks, have you ever talked about how the pandemic is asking us to embrace our femininity differently, creativity being one of those things?
Wow, I haven't thought of it in terms of a feminine or masculine. I think I view it just in terms of they all of creativity embodies both, would be my answer.
Mm-hmm. Great, good. So I'm going into the chat now, and I was jotting some comments down. I love what people were saying about they're painting more, they're an illustrator, they're dancing daily, one is leading an improv class.
Oh, that's great.
One has used her creative skills to take resilience coaching, her work online.
Wow.
Doing online fitness. I just noticed one that says a little notebook to capture light bulb moments.
I like that.
I can relate to that one for sure. I keep little notebooks sort of all over the place.
And sorry, I just thought of something in the moment about the femininity question. I was thinking about that more, and I'm wondering if the femininity aspect is because it's more of taking care of self-care, which people sometimes associate more with the feminine self. And if that is what the question was relating to, then I think yes. I think the self-care aspect of creativity is more important now than ever.
Mm-hmm. Great, good. So we do have a couple more questions, and we do have a bit more time for anyone who wants to submit others. So how does a first-time writer or poet find a publisher?
Age old question. And I actually prepared a document, kind of a shortcut, quick answers to publishing questions that Amy can make available. So it has some tips and strategies and websites and that you can use. My number one recommendation, though, is to get in touch with alum. There are so many alums in publishing, and that's actually how I got my start in publishing. Doris Cooper, shout out. She's still at Simon & Schuster. Actually, sorry, she shifted from there, but she was at Simon & Schuster and when I got my first job. And so really, I cannot say that enough. Use the alumni network in publishing in particular. the personal contact is more important than most industries.
Awesome. Great. And a related question, how do you find a mentor?
So a writing mentor, I would highlight the many online writing programs, writing seminars. By taking a writing class or workshop or seminar, you might connect with a teacher. Many of the writing teachers also act as mentors, and they're also for hire writing coaches. So really get involved. I think now I'm seeing so many online virtual writing classes. I actually took one myself, and I was shocked at how creative I felt and how much I got done. I was skeptical with the technology, but it was great. So really find some writing classes and seminars, maybe form a writing group online, and hopefully that will lead you to your mentor.
Great. Good. I'm noticing a comment that's really lovely from Margaret. I Zoom every night with my sisters and we do art together. It has brought us closer than we have been in many years. And my 90-year-old mom joined too after we asked a few times, and her art is beautiful.
Oh, that's so
lovely.
Great. So lovely.
Good. And we have another question. This is an interesting one, and I can relate to this. I often find myself doing something creative and then immediately thinking about how I can monetize it or use it for my social media. How can I stop myself from doing that?
That is the internal, that little voice inside. My favorite response to this is from Anne Lamott, who really formed me as a writer. I actually took classes with her when I was younger. She taught where I grew up, and she has this great phrase called KFCKD. So it's K blanked radio, and she always says that is tuned in to your brain sometimes when you're writing. So it is there to kind of get you off track and really derail you. So it takes some mindful and some, stop it, like really setting a goal that you're not going to listen to that and just complete your project, and then take separate time with your timer to write out. If you do think this is something that is an opportunity, make time in your day to think about the monetizing aspect of it. But when you have your creative time, just really keep yourself focused on that creative endeavor.
Mm-hmm. Great. Good. So I don't see any other questions coming in. I do see a really wonderful comment. I always learn something when I stay open and curious. This is from Susan. We are all one in this journey. This is our big shared adventure. Let's support all beings in going forward and engage with whatever comes. Sent from my garden, 2 baby garter snakes making me smile. Each moment is a new step in our emerging world. I love that, Susan. Thank you so much for that comment. So I think we are. I don't see any other questions. I'm looking at both the chat box and the Q&A. But certainly, for anyone who has any further questions, Laura's contact information is on this slide, and we'll also include it in the follow-up email that we'll send with the recording and the link to the slides. So again, Laura, thank you so very much for this amazing session, for sharing yourself and your time.
Yeah, really appreciate it.
And thanks to everyone for taking the time to join us. We had nearly 100 people on this webinar, which is great. We hope that you found it helpful, and we wish you all the best in navigating these very unique days we're living in. And we want to hear from you. If you have suggestions for future webinars, please let us know. Stay engaged with us, stay connected to the college, and certainly stay connected to Laura too. I think, Laura, you're an amazing resource for all of us. Thank you.
Well, I'm happy to talk to any Smithies. This is why I loved my time at Smith College, the connections, the network. It's so important, as you said, now more than ever. And I am on Twitter. I promise I use my timer, and I will respond if you reach out.
Great. Well, thank you all so much. I think we'll wrap up, and you'll be hearing from us soon. Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.